Hey everyone, Kevin Lewis with Home Life Benchmark Realty, and it's time for your November 2021 Fraser Valley Real Estate Market Update. October 2021 has remained consistent as for the rest of the months that have so far happened in 2021 and the end of 2020, where we've seen a much higher than average number of sales for the given month and lower than average number of new listings for that given month, which is of course leading to simple supply and demand rules where supply is low and demand is high, and that's why prices have been driving up. As simple as that sounds, there are many more complex layers to that, which we have touched on in the past. The biggest of which I will still say is the lack of overall number of houses that are available for anybody to buy in the first place. We can talk about vacant homes, and yes, of course, vacant homes do play into the total affordability of things because a vacant home is vacant and somebody can't live there despite the fact that that person might own two or three. Yeah, they could rent it or sell it to somebody else. But overall, while that does affect the market, we have to recognize that that's not a massive percentage of the total number of homes that exist. And if more homes were built, it would help to alleviate the increasing prices of homes and the overall affordability of homes that exist if we increase the overall supply, not just the supply that's available for purchase at this point in time. By saying that the underlying issue is the total number of homes available, I'm certainly not downplaying the fact that our current inventory of homes listed for sale on the MLS is very, very low. I'm certainly not downplaying that. In fact, in October 2021, we had less than half the number of total available listings that were listed only a year ago in October 2020. Overall though, and basically the way that I started this video was saying that not a whole lot has changed in October than it did from September and August and throughout the earlier months of 2021, where the issue has been inventory problems and supply and demand not matching up, driving the prices up. Recently, however, we have just last week received notice from the government that they plan to put on a mandatory 7-day cooling off period. So, what exactly does that mean, and what repercussions could this have for you when you're ready to buy your next home or ready to sell your next home? Well, we're going to talk about that here. Before we get into whether or not this cooling off period is a good thing or a bad thing, I think it makes the most sense to describe at least my interpretation of what is likely to come. Now, when I say my interpretation, I have to say it's my interpretation because they haven't really released any actual rules other than saying that it's going to be a similar program to what currently exists as the 7-day rescission period on new construction condos and townhomes. So, for my assumptions, I'm going to base that everything is going to be pretty well equal to this rescission period because that's all that we have to exist right now. Now, that could all change if the rules are substantially different than what I'm proposing that they're likely to be based on being similar to this rescission period. If they are drastically different, then of course all of my predictions here are gone out the window, but that's all that I have to base things on, and that's all that they've compared it to. So that's what we're going to use for the purpose of this video to decide whether or not that's a good thing. So what is this 7-day rescission period? Essentially, the rules are now, if you purchase a new construction condo from the developer, you don't typically go into your standard subject removal period like you would in a resale home. Instead, you go into what's called the 7-day rescission period. This is designed to give buyers a chance to go over the developer's disclosure statement, which in a resale context would be very similar to giving buyers the opportunity to get their financing approved, go over the strata documents, go over any city documents, and do their due diligence. Essentially, it becomes a mandatory 7-day due diligence period, or as we would typically call that time in a standard resale transaction, your subject removal period. So of course the biggest thing with this new change is that what's going to happen with subject-free offers? Well, as I've made it pretty clear over the last year, I'm not a fan of subject-free offers on either the buyer's side or the seller's side. Of course, they certainly have their merits, and if you're in a position as a buyer that you're able to comfortably go subject-free and are willing to take on that risk, all the power to you. However, I personally don't feel that I'm doing my job by recommending that somebody go subject-free and take on all of the risks that are associated with that. As I've mentioned several times, I've helped many, many buyers this year in this current market get all of their offers accepted with subjects on the property. I have not written a single subject-free offer this whole year as on the buyer's side. Yes, I've worked with sellers who have worked with subject-free offers, and again, that's their choice, but I've also worked with sellers who have accepted subject offers when subject-free offers were presented on the table. And what a lot of people, and especially realtors, don't seem to mention is they seem to think that once a subject-free offer is accepted, it's a done deal, it's good to go. But what if that buyer who, just decided, you know what, I can purchase this home, and they've told their realtor that they've talked to a bank, and the realtor doesn't do their due diligence to go and check. As a listing agent, I can't go and undermine the buyer's agent and say, can you verify that they've been pre-approved? Prove to me that they've been pre-approved. That's not how our current system works. I can ask for a pre-approval letter. A lot of lenders won't even provide those in the first place, so that doesn't necessarily verify anything. Secondly, banks have to approve based on the property itself, not just based on you, the buyer. So if the bank says, yeah, you're good to go for $500,000, and then you submit that with a contract of purchase and sale on a specific property, and the bank says, you know what, we're not providing a mortgage for this property. Well, you might have wrote an offer for $480 and said, you know what, we're very safe, we can go subject free on this one. You get it accepted, you hand the paperwork over to your bank, and then you find out from your bank that you can end up getting a mortgage, or it's going to cost you a lot more to get because you have to go through alternate financing in order to qualify for that mortgage. Unfortunately, it does happen, and the buyers are the ones that typically are getting the short end of the stick on that if that scenario happens and their buyer's agent has not done their due diligence to make sure that they can actually afford the home, which I will, as an aside, say, I will never guarantee that a subject-free offer is going to be okay for you unless you have that cash in your hand. Well, in that previous scenario, it was the buyer who may have to get alternate financing in order to make things work. But what if that buyer decides that they don't want to pay all the extra alternate financing and they just decide not to complete on the deal, and as a seller, you've put your property up for sale, you've got an accepted offer, now you've gone to agree to purchase another one, and then the buyer of your property doesn't end up going through, well, there's going to be some big repercussions down the line from that deal collapsing, which may or may not, I'm not saying that the new system of a cool-off period will guarantee that this won't happen, but in my opinion, it will reduce the risk because now in that 7-day period, you're going to send the paperwork to the bank, and if the bank says, no, do you know what, you can't get a mortgage on this property, you're not going to buy that property, and that seller, okay, they might have to wait another week while another offer comes in, but instead of assuming that everything was a done deal and having that buyer back out last minute and causing much bigger problems down the road, they find out much sooner on that that buyer can't actually complete on that home, and the seller is in a better position. With this new cooling off period, however, I feel that it does level the playing field, because now that buyer who is pre-approved for $500,000 and is going to make offers at $480, $490 kind of thing to give a little bit of wiggle room in case the property is a little bit aside, now that buyer can compete with the deep pockets investor who has no issues going subject free in case the bank says, you know what, instead of 20% down on this property, we need you to do 30% because we don't feel that the value is where it is, whatever the reason may be. That big deep pocket investor has much more money and much more ability to just take the risk in a subject-free situation, whereas many buyers that I'm working with specifically are not in a position where they're comfortable to go subject-free. And this new cooling off period, while they've announced that it's supposed to help reduce prices, I completely disagree with that. But I do feel that it does make the playing field more equitable for anybody making offers on a property as subjects essentially become mandatory. Now, I've also heard some rumors going around that a lot of agents will say, well, do you know what? We're going to say that we need a non-refundable deposit up front. I don't think that's going to be allowable under the new rules, as it's not allowable in new construction at this point in time in the 7-day rescission period that exists. And as I said earlier in this video, I'm going to base everything that we're going to go off of those rules or very similar rules to that. So if for some reason they do allow non-refundable deposits to be in place, I think that this will have absolutely terrible repercussions down the road, and I don't think anybody benefits from that being the case. However, we have to assume that that's not going to be allowed based on the reality of the situation. Overall, I'm taking an optimistic view on the change, and I do think that it will help people in the long run and the short term once it comes out, and I do think it has potential to do some very good, depending on how it's rolled out and depending how the rules are written. Is there potential for it to be abused? Of course there is, but that's going to be the case with any legislation that changes how things are done. Is there going to be potential that it does drive prices up? Of course that's going to be there. But is there the potential that the buyer, who's the average buyer, who it seems the sentiment in government is that they want to help first-time buyers and those who can't afford houses. Yes, lowering prices would be a great way to do that, but as a government, how do you step in and lower the value of somebody's asset that they currently own? I don't think there's an equitable, fair way to do that, and instead they need to look into the future, and that's what I think they're doing with this cooling off period, is actually looking into how can we fix things going forward rather than how can we correct what's already been done. Because correcting what's already been done means that there's currently people who are profiting or doing just staying above under the current system that are now, you've devalued their place, boom, now they've lost a ton of their net worth and they are simply stuck because they took the jump to get in, but the person who waited for the government to step in. It will be interesting to see going forward how things play out, and hopefully for everybody's sake they play out the way that I'm actually thinking they will, where the buyers will benefit. Maybe prices do go up a little bit, which is not going to be best for anybody in the end, but I do feel that this is the better way forward, despite a lot of my colleagues thinking differently. I don't necessarily think they're wrong, and I think a lot of their concerns about the changes are valid concerns. However, I do feel that they have been blown a little out of proportion, perhaps. So overall, hopefully the changes are good. The market is still in a pretty good condition, whether you're looking to buy or sell. Of course, if you are looking to buy, as we touched on, inventory is still an issue. However, I don't see prices coming down anytime soon. So like I've been saying for the last several months, or last over a year, I do think that the prices today are likely the most affordable that homes will be going into the near future. So if you're looking to buy soon as your first home or an investment property, sooner probably is better. However, I wouldn't say there's a big rush to jump in before anything happens. I do think we will see prices rise a little bit in spring, maybe 5 to 10% by the next summer kind of thing. And I think we'll see that level off for another year until the following spring. And if you're thinking of selling, well, whatever the market does becomes a little bit less relevant as it stays relative to what your next home's going to be, unless you're just looking to get out of the market altogether. But whatever your situation is, be sure to get in touch soon. Give me a call, 604-218-5635. Send me an email, kevin@kevinlewis.com. Leave me a comment below. However you want to reach out to me, reach out. Let me know your situation, and we'll start making a plan, whether you're 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years away from making a move happen. It's never too early to start planning. I look forward to hearing from you soon, and thanks for tuning in.